Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today, we're diving into something pretty interesting, the top 10 whitest states in America.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at more than just the rankings.
Exactly. We're going to try to figure out some of the reasons behind these demographics, maybe uncover a few surprises along the way.
When you think about these states, you often picture wide open spaces, rural landscapes, and
Yeah, and like a very traditional way of life.
yeah, exactly.
But as we'll see, there's more to the story than just that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so let's jump into the deep end, starting with number 10, Nebraska. 87.5% of Nebraska's population identifies as white. That's about 2.1 million people. Now, I know Nebraska is known for cornfields and a pretty laid-back vibe, but what else is going on there?
Well, Nebraska is interesting because it really embodies that link between rural lifestyle and demographics. Back in the late 1800s, there was a huge wave of European immigrants, mostly Germans, seeking farming opportunities, and they settled in states like Nebraska. And that historical migration pattern has had a lasting effect.
At number 9, we have Montana.
Oh, big sky country.
Big sky country. Almost 89% of Montana's population is white. And it's a state that's been attracting a lot of attention lately, especially with those remote work and van life trends.
Definitely, Montana has this rugged beauty that really appeals to folks seeking a certain kind of isolation, but the influx of newcomers, drawn by affordability and the promise of a simpler life, it raises a really important question. Will Montana keep its predominantly white population, or will it become more diverse as more and more people move there?
Yeah,
It's definitely a trend to keep an eye on.
absolutely. It'll be fascinating to see how those demographic shifts play out over time. Now let's head over to the heartland of America. Iowa coming in at number 8 with almost 90% of its population identifying as white. We often hear about Iowa's farming culture, but is there more to it than meets the eye?
Well, Iowa is a lot like Nebraska in that it also saw a significant influx of European immigrants in the 19th century who were drawn by the fertile farmland and all the new opportunities.
Makes sense.
And those early settlement patterns have definitely had a lasting impact.
Mm.
And while Iowa is known for its agriculture, it also has a surprisingly robust manufacturing sector,
Oh, okay.
which could actually be drawing a whole new wave of residents.
So it's not all just cornfields and state fairs.
No, not at all. Iowa has a really diverse economy,
Right.
and that economic diversity could definitely play a role in shaping its future demographics.
That's a great point. Now, for number 7, we're going to Utah, where 90% of the population is white. Utah has a really distinct cultural identity, largely shaped by the Mormon population, right?
Yeah, the history of the Mormon migration to Utah is really key to understanding the state's demographics.
Right.
They were seeking religious freedom, and they ended up creating a really unique cultural landscape that still exists today. But Utah also has some really stunning natural beauty and a booming tech industry, which are attracting a wider range of people these days.
Yeah, it's fascinating how a state's history can be so intertwined with its demographics. Now, hold on to your hats, folks, because at number 6, we're going to Wyoming. With a 92.3% white population, Wyoming is often seen as like the epitome of the Wild West.
Yeah. Wyoming is definitely a state of wide open spaces, and it's got a very strong independent spirit. It's also predicted to see a pretty significant population surge in the coming years, driven by its affordability and the growing appeal of remote work.
Which kind of raises the same question we had about Montana. Will this influx of new residents change the makeup of Wyoming?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah,
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see this trend of people seeking refuge from the craziness of city life.
Hmm.
And that trend could definitely reshape the demographics of these traditionally white states.
it's like the modern day pioneer spirit, but instead of covered wagons, it's people with laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots. Okay, on to number 5, Idaho, with the 92.6% white population. Idaho's been a super popular relocation destination lately, known for its outdoor recreation and, of course, potatoes. But despite its recent popularity, it hasn't seen a big increase in diversity,
Yeah, it's interesting.
which suggests that the people moving to Idaho are largely drawn to a lifestyle that aligns with the existing cultural landscape.
You got it. People are seeking communities that share their values and their lifestyle preferences,
Right.
and that can definitely contribute to keeping those demographic patterns.
Now let's head over to New England, where we find New Hampshire at number 4, also with a 92.6% white population. New Hampshire has a reputation for being, I don't know, very independent-minded, both politically and culturally.
Absolutely. New Hampshire has a really long history of being predominantly white, going all the way back to its early settlement by English colonists. And it's a state with a super strong sense of community and tradition, which might be contributing to its demographic stability.
Yeah, but it's also worth pointing out that people of color who have moved to New Hampshire have said that they've sometimes felt isolated because of the lack of diversity.
It's a good point. It's a reminder that statistics don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah,
Individual experiences within a state can be super different.
right.
And it's really important to consider those lived experiences when we're talking about demographic trends.
Absolutely. Now, moving on to number 3, we have West Virginia, where 92.8% of the population identifies as white. West Virginia often gets pegged as the whitest state in people's minds, but it's always in the top 5, never actually taking that top spot.
Right, and it really highlights how sometimes perceptions don't match up with reality.
Right.
West Virginia has this rich Appalachian culture and a very strong sense of history, which have definitely shaped its demographics.
Yeah, it's interesting how certain states become associated with certain demographics, even if those associations aren't completely accurate.
Yeah, it really speaks to the power of stereotypes and how they can affect our understanding of places and people.
Before we move on to the top 2, let's take a quick sec to remind you to like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics.
Yeah, and don't forget to leave us your thoughts and questions down in the comments below.
Yes, please. We always love hearing from you and continuing the conversation. Okay, back to our countdown. And number 2, we have Vermont, where a whopping 93.8% of the population is white. Vermont's known for its beautiful scenery, maple syrup, and a particular brand of liberal politics.
Yeah, Vermont has a long history of attracting people who are seeking a simpler, more rural lifestyle.
Hmm.
It's a state with a strong focus on community and environmentalism, and that might be contributing to its demographic makeup.
But like New Hampshire, it also raises questions about inclusivity and whether those seeking a more diverse community might feel out of place.
That's definitely a valid concern. The desire for a strong community can sometimes lead to a certain insularity, which can be challenging for newcomers from different backgrounds.
It's a complex issue for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, and now, drumroll please, the number 1 whitest state in America is Maine, with a mind-blowing 93.9% of its population identifying as white. Maine takes the crown. Maine, famous for lobster, lighthouses, and that rugged coastline, has a long and fascinating history.
Yeah, early English settlements had a huge impact on shaping its demographics, and that legacy is still felt today.
It's really amazing how those historical patterns can have such a lasting impact.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that to really understand the demographic makeup of a place, you have to dig into its past. But Maine, like a lot of the states we've talked about, is also experiencing demographic shifts.
But even the whitest state in America isn't immune to change.
Exactly. These trends are dynamic, they're always evolving, and it'll be interesting to see how they unfold in the years to come. What's a truly classic Maine experience that no one should miss?
Ooh, I think I know this one.
It's gotta be a lobster feast. Whether it's a lobster roll or a steaming bowl of clam chowder or a whole traditional Maine lobster bake. You can't leave Maine without having some of that delicious fresh seafood.
That's the perfect way to wrap up our journey through the top 10 whitest states in America.
Yeah.
We've covered so much, from demographics to hidden gems, and I hope you've learned some new things along the way.
It's been such a fascinating exploration, and it just goes to show that there's always more to learn and discover, even in places we think we already know.
Kind of said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and as always, keep those brains buzzing.